Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast celebrating pleasure, sexuality, and the vibrant, inclusive spectrum of love, gender, and relationships. I'm your host, Mo, and with me are my co-hosts, Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly. And together we hope to dismantle tropes that no longer suit us and change the narrative towards more authentic living.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. Hey, welcome back.
We're
Season
back.
2. Woohoo. We are back.
We got
Hello.
lots to talk about. So much to cover. It's hard to know where to start.
Yeah. I kind of thought maybe we wanted to do a quick refresher on what we talked about last season.
Oh, what did we do last season?
Last season. Well, I think we talked about I think a few things that stand out to me. One was, the ethical and consensual non-monogamy is something that we're all working towards, right?
Right.
Because we live in a culture where there's the monogamy hangover, right? So we're kind of constantly like battling norms, like cultural norms, to get to a place where we dismantle a lot of the ideas around monogamy and heteronormativity and couple privilege and the relationship escalator. So we talked a lot about that last season.
We did.
And we talked about hierarchies. And we talked about, like how non-hierarchical, ethical, and consensual non-monogamy is also an ideal that we are striving for because, trying to dismantle couple privilege a little bit. So we talked a lot about that. So definitely check out season 1.
We're gonna see that we do it.
And yeah, I think there was one thing that Wayne that brought up that maybe can lead into today's episode. But Wayne talked about, and we brought this up in our support group the other day, but once you start talking about it, it's already happening. Like that was a kind of a thread, I feel like, through some of our episodes also. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
What was the context of that?
It was mostly around like communicating. Wayne can probably explain it, but like basically like once you start talking about something, it's already like the train has already left the station.
Yeah.
It's part of the conversation. It's part of it's entered the relationship.
It's already in the relationship at somehow. Right. One person's either thinking about it already or something's already happened around it. So
yeah, Wayne, will you say a little bit more about that?
No, yeah, it was just that, I feel like I think it's, like when a conversation is brought to a partner, it can feel really scary, and, but I don't know if the partner really understands that, avoiding it isn't going to be helpful because it's already happening. So at that point you kind of, it's better for the relationship to address it. And I think that, we try to, like, is that out of sight, out of mind type of idea, like, oh, okay, well, if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. No, it's just running in the background constantly and it's showing up in other ways. And I don't think that, we recognize how it shows up in other ways in a relationship. So, so yeah, once it comes up, it's already been a thing. They've already been thinking about it. They've already processed it to an extent. So when they bring it to you, it's just at that moment is when they felt comfortable enough or fed up enough, whichever it is, right, to bring it to you in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think goes really great with what we're going to talk about today, and that is attachment. And I think, what Wayne brought up was avoidant. Like there's one person that may be trying to avoid it. And the reason I like attachment theory is avoidant attachment style is something that we see a lot, right? People that have this attachment style tend to avoid like maybe intimacy, or they want to avoid the conversations that are hard. I call it like sticking your head in the sand, sort of like it's not real, it's not happening. If I don't know about it, then I don't have to feel it. And I think that what happens in that is that we rob ourselves of an opportunity of growth. Um, you know, that's a big picture. And then obviously we're robbing ourselves from connecting with our partners. We're robbing ourselves of feeling things. So yeah.
Yeah. I know that, when some people hear like anxious, like for myself, like I've always looked at myself as a uh pretty much secure type person when I come into relationships. And I think that what I recognized when it's what when me like between me and Melissa, I recognized I had become anxious, and the reason was because Melissa wasn't talking to me. So then I don't know what's happening. And so now I'm trying to fill in the blanks, and I'm trying to create this story, that I'm now, because I'm not getting the answers from her. So now I'm starting to chase her for the answers. Like, hey, I'm trying to force a conversation out of her when she's not ready to have the conversation. She hasn't processed. And this was early on in our relationship. We've gotten so much, oh my God, we've gotten so much better over here. But I remember it would almost be like she would give me the silent treatment. And I would get so frustrated. So now I become more agitated and more, uh,
Mhm.
you know, and I'd be like this, what are
You
you
become
doing?
more
Like,
anxious, right? It like
yes.
perpetuates the cycle, and Melissa becomes more avoidant. And
Yeah.
both of those are you like opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of attachment styles. But it's funny how you find those partners too.
I didn't, yeah, I wasn't even aware of it until I had no idea that that's what I was doing until he brought it to my attention. And yeah, because you just it's this like this often unconscious pattern, this cycle, this pattern that we have, emotional behavioral pattern that we have that is rooted right in like our childhood experiences, is rooted from a time that we might not, yeah, we didn't have that conscious awareness of what we're doing, and so unless it's kind
Yeah.
of somehow brought to our attention, it will stay unconscious. So yeah, that was interesting to experience with Wayne, to be like, oh, this is just, I don't know, this is how I do things. I didn't realize
But
it was a thing.
we don't realize like a lot of the ways that we respond in life are coping skills that we
Hmm.
developed as kids,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say that to people who are listening, like, anxious style and avoidance style is not a bad thing. It's just trying to figure out a way to work with what it is that you're dealing with. And and I always ask people, like, when I'm even working with my clients, I ask, do you feel like when the anxious person, do you feel like you're getting the answers, or you feel like your partner's talking to you? And because that's a good place to start to see why the anxiety is showing up, or why you're showing up in an anxious way. And even on the avoidance side, like, what are you not trying to feel? What are you wanting to avoid? Like, what is it that feels scary to you? Do you feel like, if I recently, a client said, that they felt like, they were waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Hmm.
So they were avoidant because they were just waiting for their partner to come to them and tell them whatever it is that they were waiting to hear. So again, just trying to figure out what is it that you're feeling, and either wanting to get an answer to, or what are you trying to avoid? Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, why don't we talk about, or just real quickly go over what the four attachment styles are, right? So we kind of know what these words are that we're throwing around.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
So we've got secure, we've got anxious, kind of slash preoccupied, avoidant slash dismissive, and then disorganized, which is fearful and avoidant. Just if we're going to be throwing those around, I think we should
I love that. Yeah. Because especially for people who have no idea what attachment styles are, and then they got to go look it up, but we can give them kind of a simple, quick answer for it, like, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'll just read these definitions we have here. So a secure attachment style is when you're comfortable with closeness and independence. Anxious, preoccupied would be when you crave closeness but you fear abandonment. And avoidant or dismissive is when you value independence. and you fear engulfment. And disorganized kind of slash fearful avoidant is wants closeness, but fears it, but fears it too. And the high, I can't even read that, emotional,
Yeah.
high emotional swings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's
Thanks,
I
man.
feel like it would be helpful and important to share, like that this is a theory.
Yes.
Yes.
It's someone's, theory of how we relate, of how humans relate and in the world, not just in, romantic relationships, but in literally everything. We can use this attachment theory for how we relate in the workplace, for, how we relate with our kids and everything really. And it's a theory. And I have like a bittersweet attraction and connection to to attachment theory. Um, I like parts of it, because it's a helpful framework, helpful perspective, on helping us kind of get to know ourselves better and how we seek connection, and safety and things like that. And but at the same time, like it feels also very, very limiting. And I just sometimes cringe at like when we're like, oh, I'm this and I'm that, I mean, same thing like we talk about non-monogamy or monogamy. It's just like we get into these like put ourselves in a box, and then it
Mm.
sometimes can feel pretty pathologizing, we kind of use it in this way to like to criticize ourselves or to judge ourselves or to whatnot. And so it's like, yes, it's a theory. Yes, it can be helpful, and just remember that it's a theory, and there's so many other theories out there to include. And I would, you know, yeah, encourage us to consider these, because this is like it's a clinical theory on top of that. It's, it's all the things. It's the Western, white, centered,
No,
the
100%.
research on it is on the norm, the norm, which is what we saying, cis, white, het, like
Set, yeah.
all of that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I like what
individualized
you
Western.
It's
Yeah, I
important
like
to
what you're
remember
saying.
that.
I think of it as just one lens. It's like we get to look at all these issues through a bunch of different lenses.
Yeah,
This is just one.
yeah.
And
This
we
is
can
just
take from it what works for us and leave the rest behind, but not get
exactly.
too attached to it. The way someone would get like attached to a diagnosis or something. It's like, no, just hold it loosely and just know that's a little more one other lens that you can look at this through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's sort of how I see it, but I hear everything you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah. And
But
I,
go ahead, sorry.
yeah. And I don't know which one of you guys said it. It's either Kelly or Mo. Before we got on here, was talking about just like, again, because I believe that we are a little bit of all of them. Right. And I think one of you guys said, just depending on where you are in a relationship at whatever time, you can be
Yeah.
avoidant today and anxious tomorrow. You could be secure next week, and yeah. So yeah, it just depends on where you are in your relationship, and just kind of like just knowing I like that. Just it's
Mhm.
just a basis, just a
Information
yeah,
about yourself.
information about
Yeah.
yourself.
A
Yeah.
way to kind of, yeah.
And it's ways to have kind of shared language around something, right?
Yes.
I know
Mhm.
a lot of my clients do talk to each other in these terms because it's become pretty, even for like the lay person, like the attachment, I think is something that's like been floating around. And so it's just another way to have shared language, which is also important to make sure that they are meaning the same thing when they're saying these things, right? What that means for them and their specific situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I want to sort of like echo what Melissa was saying, that it is just a theory. And I do find that a lot of our clients cling to these theories because all of a sudden there's an explanation for this dynamic that's happening in their life, in their relationship. Um, and that makes them feel seen, right? It
Hmm.
makes them feel heard. But again, it's not going to fit for everyone. And again, I think, it is, a lot of times based in and rooted in um, white supremacy, the patriarchy, couple privilege, and the nuclear family, so it's rooted in a lot of the ways that we've been colonized.
Yeah.
So always important to kind of have that critical lens to remember that that's the time that we're in, and that's what we're living in, and many of us are trying to undo that. So
Yes. Yeah. And it makes me think about like sometimes I tell people, it's like, I don't know if you understand how much these things, these ideas or theories really affect you as a person. Like if you're not conscious of it, you'll be choosing things without even your subconscious would help you choose things which maybe if you thought about it, you possibly wouldn't choose, if you were more aware.
Are you talking about like who we choose to be with, or the relationships that
Just
we like to be
all
in and
so
things
many
like
different things.
anything,
Behavior.
Yeah.
the way we talk, the language that
Yes.
we use,
Yeah.
like we like are sending ourselves these like subconscious messages all the time.
Mhm.
And it's hard, especially when you're trying to navigate non-monogamy and you turn on a freaking song that you love, an artist that you love, and all of a sudden they're singing about, I'm gonna love you for the rest of my life, you're the only one for me,
Yeah. Oh
those
my
kinds of
God.
that kind of language, and you're in the throes of like struggling with your non-monogamy, and you're like, holy shit, I'm not supposed to be non-monogamous, right? Like you're getting all these messages that, um, you know,
It influence your thoughts and behavior.
yeah,
Yeah. I try to say that. I say that, be careful what you digest. May it be through media, through music, through even your friend group, because it affects how you show up in your relationship. It can affect how you show up in your relationships for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
you
that's
have
a
to
good,
be really careful, what you digest.
yeah. But I think that's a good segue to talk about now that we've just sort of generally talked about what these different attachment styles are, how they show up in non-monogamy.
Yeah.
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 What one point that I liked about non-monogamy specifically, and as it relates to attachment theory, is that what to say it non-monogamy I don't want to say exposes, that's not the word I want to use, but like it
Highlights.
no, it's dang it, but it brings up attachment, or kind of this attachment,
Mhm.
this our attachment styles even more so because we're dealing with potentially multiple people, and yeah, and the norms, I guess, of what is considered safe and secure are challenged, by something that our society does not usually see as safe and secure. And so it can really activate those attachment styles and really, yeah, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like
It
amplify,
heightens
maybe
it,
amplify.
it brings
Yeah,
it.
heightens it.
Yeah.
Yes, like heightens and amplifies that. So that's what I really liked about it. And often when we talk about like monogamy and non-monogamy versus non-monogamy, there's I in my opinion, it's like there's not like a whole lot that is so super unique about non-monogamy. It's just more so kind of like how we see it and address it and things like that. But one thing that I do think is super unique to non-monogamy is that there are multiple people, like that is by definition like the difference of it. There are multiple people, and so the more people that you add in, the more challenging it's gonna be. It can be,
The more you got to work on your shit.
Yeah.
Well, I think
So
that's
tough.
what's why I always say it's transformative, because
Mhm.
you have to work on your shit or your relationship's going to fall apart,
Yes.
right? So when you're doing maybe we should change the term from ethical and consensual to conscious, like conscious
Like that.
non-monogamy, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
mindful non-monogamy, deliberate,
Hmm.
I like that.
non-monogamy.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. 'Cause, I don't like ethical non-monogamy. I just like as
You
if
hate
like
that.
it's
Wayne
unethical.
hates it.
Yeah. Oh, it's just because it's
Well,
unethical.
it implies that it's that the standard is that it's unethical.
Yeah.
Yes, it centers on ethical non-monogamy. I get
Yeah.
it. You're right, Lane.
Hence me never using ethical non-monogamy. I don't even use that
Yeah,
term.
it's like saying people of color,
Yes.
right? Like as opposed to like the majority people.
Right.
The majority people of the world.
Right. Yeah.
People of color centers whiteness and
Yes. 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 Yeah. You know, yeah.
um,
And I again and I know that these things like even in this podcast, right? We talk about avoidant, like because that just made me think about my clients, like like you have people who don't even want to listen to certain information because it may now make it real, as if it's not already real. Like oh yeah, because I told my clients, I was like, 'cause I have a couple of clients that's opening up their relationship or trying to, and I suggested it, listen to this podcast or whatever, and I could already tell they kind of like shut down. And I know that's what the person deals with in a relationship because it almost feels like, oh yeah, if we do that, that makes it real. Then that means we're actually trying to do something, or well, we're moving the stuckness is what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the relationship in one way or another because you guys are stuck and you guys aren't happy. But yeah, this makes me think about that.
Well, you said that it brought up another important thing that I think is important to share is like these anxious and avoidant and disorganized, like styles that come up. Like you said, they're not bad. They're not, it's just information about how we like you learn you get are in relationship with people, but also how we, I think, try to keep ourselves safe, like how to
Hmm.
like you said, Mo, but it's kind of more in this coping way. And I think it's coping because it's something that was developed as a child, which no longer maybe usually fits us as an adult now. We haven't like updated those things that we learned. And so, it can, which is why I really love using, again, another theory, another model, another kind of Western clinical theory, but is emotion focused therapy, and it uses attachment a lot. And I love using that with my couples work because it helps us to kind of not get caught up in all of the context of what's happening and, and whatnot, and get so, yeah, stuck in the whack-a-mole game that we do of like this happened and you said this, da, 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 da. And it really slows things down and helps us to focus on like what is actually happening
Yeah.
here, like what is the cycle that we've both contributed to, and how does like what is our response to difficult conversation, or like how do we respond when we're dealing with difficult emotions and difficult things are coming up in our relationship. And that, I think, to me, it's hard, but it is when we get to focus on that. That's like giving you teaching you how to fish versus giving you the fish type of thing. Like when you come into couples work and you can figure that out for yourselves, I don't care what problem comes up, you can get through it because you're very aware of how you're dealing with each other and how you're showing up, and versus like working on each individual problem,
Hmm.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it also brings up the point that you said, Kelly, of like processing. I wanted to bring that up because I do think that's a great way of like how we can tie this with non-monogamy, is because all of these attachment styles, like they're not necessarily different from how they would show up in monogamy. But there are some ways that it does uniquely show up. And you were talking about like this processing, how we use processing, and how that can be like an anxious or avoidant, I guess, like reaction or whatnot to what's going on in our relationships. Did you want to share that?
Well, I mean, what I was saying is one of the things that was, sort of listed is that there can be a need for constant reassurance, and I added that, well, and also this need or desire to process it all the time, and
Yeah.
how that felt a little bit different. But I guess what you're saying is that that's the way that shows up in non-monogamy more. Is it because the relationships are more complex, or because I don't know that I think that that's just for non-monogamy. I think some people are like that though.
No, yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that I think it was because one, that's a word that I think the non-monogamy community like very specifically uses
Processing.
as processing, you know. So even though the processing happens in monogamous relationships too, it's like a thing in non-monogamy, you know. And I think sometimes like to your point, like it kind of happens even just because like that's what we think we should be doing or whatever. It's like we're processing, we got to process, you know. Like so I do feel like in that way it is kind of unique to non-monogamy. And it kind of becomes this coping thing. Like you mentioned anxious, like it can be like this constant, like, well, maybe seeking, like what did you think, what did in your mind, what did you think it was like seeking information, seeking knowing, like I need to know, or we need to figure this out. Like what was
Yeah. I
behind that?
mean, Kelly, you can talk about what we talked about because it was personal to me, but like it was showing up in my relationship a lot where um it was like every time a new situation would come up, there was a need for conversation. And in my relationship, I would say I'm the avoidant type, right? Like that's just kind of my default. In this particular scenario with this particular person, I tend to be the avoidant type. Like this person needs a lot more conversation, reassurance, and I'm always like, okay, 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 you know. Um, and so that's how it was showing up for us. And I mean, and that is right, like Kelly said, it shows up in almost every scenario where we have um, an issue or a
Mhm.
disagreement. And I'm like, for me, it's like I'm not ready to process. I just have because I work. I'm like I'm focused on all of these other things, and like it's destabilizing to constantly have to process something,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's non-monogamy related or something else. And um, this partner is very um, wants reassurance often, and I think wants it by way of processing, right? And so it really comes down to like, well, we do probably need to process this. I am a therapist. I know that I need to, but I also feel like I need it. There's a time and place for me because I don't want to be constantly push and pulled. And it's now I know that it's something's going to come up and it might be potentially destabilizing for me. So I have to know, I have to have boundaries around how often we do that. So
Is it okay if I ask a question since you're already talking about it from a personal place?
yeah, of course.
Do you find that, you were saying you identify more with being avoidant attachment style. Do you find, or can you think of times when you've bounced outside of that? And is it, or does that feel very, atypical for you?
To not be avoidant,
Yeah, to
you
be
mean?
one of the others, whichever.
Yeah, so I definitely get into the anxious attachment. Um, have definitely like, struggling with jealousy and comparison, um, fear of being replaced. Like fear is huge, and I talk about that a lot because I think that fear is often at the root of everything, right? It's at the root of all of these different
Yeah.
attachment styles. When you're not secure, you're afraid.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I that like these attachment styles are fluid, right? You kind of flow through them based on where you're at and what you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
But like avoidant is the kind of go-to in this particular relationship with this particular person. We tend to do that.
Something came up for me while you were talking about it. It made me think about it from the avoidant perspective. For me, what came up for me is like I understand, I can logically understand why someone would be avoidant depending on how someone is coming at them, right? Because like you said, if you're going to come at me a certain way, it's going to disrupt, whatever it is, my nervous system, whatever. Then yeah, I'm possibly going to not want to talk about this. I'm going to avoid it because of the energy you're bringing to me when you come, because you're bringing that anxious energy. So it's more of a interrogation almost instead of just a conversation or just like a curious one, like, hey, so it's not like that. And even if it appears to be that, it feels like there's ulterior motive behind it, like you're trying to get something from me, and none of those would feel good. So yeah, it just makes me see like how we can go back and forth between why I would be avoidant or why I would be anxious because of how the energy, and Melissa brought this to my attention. Be aware of the energy that you bring to the conversation
Mm.
because that can dictate and change a lot of things, in a quick moment, depending on how I come to the conversation, And I was like, oh yeah. So when you said it, it just made me think about, I wonder what the energy was that was brought to you when you would avoid or not really want to process in that moment. Because I know from our experience has been that.
Do you want me to answer?
Or was there a question?
Oh,
No,
Melissa.
it was
Oh,
yeah, just kind of just don't it's kind of speaking to the masses rather, like for people so people can be aware of these things. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think what I was gonna say was, and that's what I love to like highlight in my couples work because it's like they get in, not that you said this, I'm bringing something else in, that they get into this whole blaming thing of like, well, you did this and so then therefore I did this, and and it's like this. But I was like, guys, if we do that, do you know how far back we can go? Like we'll be tracking this all the way to you two were born, like on where it started, and so, and not always, I'm sure there's like sometimes some unique situations where yeah, maybe we can like really hold accountable for or whatnot. But for the most part, it's like I let them know like there is no blame. There's no one person's fault here. This is the thing that you two have created together. You contributed to creating this. And like, so yes, while this we can say like, well, my partner, okay, this is where I want to bring it in. Like my partner comes at me like this. And it's like not taking anything away from that. Yes, but also, it's like both and it's like, yes, and let's address that. Let's talk about that, but also, how do you respond? Like that's the whole thing. Like this is the cycle and the patterns. It's like, and then how do you respond to that? Just with curiosity and compassion. Again, not criticizing or judging you either. It's just like, can you two see this thing that you do together type of thing?
yeah,
And can you see that for yourself, because it's so easy for us to pick out what our partner does and doesn't do, but can we see it within ourselves,
Mhm.
um and also that leads me to share, Kelly, to your question. I think I can answer your question that you asked, Mo, for myself. I tend to also be more of the avoidant type, I think by default predominantly. And I'm learning, and I've learned and I'm learning that I think when a relationship is new, I can be more anxious at first. Um, I think so. I mean, again, this is not putting
yeah,
myself
yeah,
in a box,
That makes sense.
like
Yeah.
it really depends on who I'm connecting with too and what their style is or whatnot.
Mhm.
But I think generally speaking, I might be a little bit more anxious in when relationship is new because we don't have that foundation yet, or it feels like, I don't really know yet what's happening and what's going on and who you are, and we're figuring that out, and so I can be a little more anxious in that. But I think, yeah, but predominantly, I think I tend to kind of be avoidant when that comes up. Especially in like, long-term relationships, like, but if something comes up in a new relationship, I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. I need to know where we are. I need to know where I stand. I need to know
Interesting.
what I mean to you and
Sure.
all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that non-monogamy is like you all said, like it forces us to all of these things are kind of constantly flying at us, right? Like your new relationships are going to bring out, one type of, attachment style. And then your, the other relationships, like it's really interesting to observe, and I think that it provides us with this like wonderful playground to really just look at all of the ways in which we've been shaped, conditioned, whether culturally or familially with our families, or like scarcity mindset comes to mind around like love, right? I think culture teaches us that you're only supposed to have one, right? That's an example. And
Yeah.
then when you have a lot of multiple partners, you've got a lot of different styles that so like an avoidant person, we're going to feel more anxious, right? Somebody who's anxious, we're going to feel more avoidant. And I think that like we get to see how that showed up in our families, right? Because there's probably one of each in our family too, right? So we've got these different relationship styles that we're replaying in all of our relationships. And you don't have to be non-monogamous like in a romantic or sexual sense in order to start studying how you show up with different friends, different, like you can. I think there's a lot of potential growth happening, but I think in our culture, the growth is more important within like these like romantic and sexual intimate partnerships. And I think
Yeah.
the opportunity for growth is rampant in all of our relationships.
Yeah. It made me think about when Kelly was talking about, her and Melissa were talking about process, and Kelly was saying that, well, it's not that it's process that monogamous relationships don't process, because granted, yes, they do. I just think that in the sense of if we were talking about process, it's like non-monogamous relationship, they have huge bandwidth because all the processing comes through at once. It's kind of like streamlined through a monogamous relationship because it's like, yeah, let me be careful what I bring up or what I don't bring up because I don't want to jeopardize the core of the relationship in itself, right? I don't want to make my partner feel like this relationship isn't important. So we have to prioritize the relationship in itself more so in non-monogamous relationships. We try to be individuals coming into a relationship. Yeah, and not to say that's a blanket statement. It's just like for what we understand, like, when you talk to people who are in relationships, it's like, yeah, you have to stop doing this when you become in a relationship. You can't do this anymore. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. You don't do this. So it's not that those things go away. You just keep them buried and hidden from your partner.
Yeah.
You don't talk about them. But in relationship with the non-monogamous is what we talk about, which goes back to all these different attachment styles because we have to talk about these things. These things are all constantly happening and going, which to your point, Mo, helps with the growth. It
Yeah.
helps us to understand ourselves better. It helps us show up differently, and hopefully it is our best selves when we're in relations with others. No
Yeah.
matter if you're in one relationship or six relationships.
Yeah. I think if I can speak on behalf of the entire non-monogamous world, we choose non-monogamy because the alternative is dismantling relationships with people we love, right? And so I think when we begin to acknowledge the importance of all of these relationships in our lives, we and the importance of the things that come with them, whether it is romantic or sexual, those are still important things. And maybe you want to share it with several different people, or I think that like it's that maintaining of multiple relate all these different relationships that requires that work,
Yeah.
you
That
know
was, yeah, that
because
was a
as
gem, Mo.
adults we're
That's how I said that was a gem. That was a bar. Like, yeah, we
that's going to be
choose
the thread
we,
this
we choose non-monogamy because we don't want to dismantle the relationship that we're in. That is
yeah,
so true. That's so true.
yeah, because you know in our monogamous cis het culture, it's serial monogamy, right? Like you finish one relationship, you move on to the next, and like in order to move on to the next, like we see people are so angry holding on to these resentments, like that relationship, in order for that relationship to end, it's got to end bad. And then we hear that thread throughout the new relationship. Oh, my ex, and then the language around it too, right? My ex. is so it's toxic right in there. Like when we think of the ex, it's like
someone that's been X'd out of your life.
someone that's been X'd out of your life, the ex. And this came up for me the other day too. My neighbor was talking and she was telling us about her bonus child. And I was like, I love that language so much because growing up, I used to hear people talking about people like, oh, my stepsister, and it's like, what the fuck is a stepsister? You mean
Right.
you're a
Oh,
bonus
love
sister?
bonus.
One step removed from real family. That's what
Yeah,
it's
it's
like.
fuck. It's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I really I was like bonus. And I hear people using that kind of language a lot lately, like my bonus mother, my bonus, my bonus sister, my bonus daughter. Um, you know, when we do non-monogamy, we're getting a bunch of
Absolutely.
bonus relationships, right? But they're not bonus.
Absolutely.
Bonus also centers monogamy, right? Bonus centers the even the word bonus centers the nuclear family, but it's at least sweeter and nicer than step, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we're running towards the end of the I would love this season I would love to talk about because something that's come up a lot in my sessions is around patriarchy in relationships. That's been coming up a lot recently. And something has come up, and it's not to shift but the conversation it just made me think about like because we were talking about bonus, and it's just like, man, it's just making me think like how hard that could feel for somebody like, oh no, this person's still coming in and taking something away from me or whatever. In the patriarchal ideology, like in a way, like it needs to be a certain way. It made me think about men being always talk about how they want to be the protector, the provider, and all these type of things. And I said to my client the other day, I said, you say you want to be all these things, right? And I think that the best way you can be those things in the way the world is today, because you're not out protecting from all these killers and assassins and animals. It's not that type of life that we're living today. But how you could be that is by being the container and holding space for your partner to really be honest and really tell you the things and say the things that they possibly have not been able to say in any relationship before or prior.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's being
The
the protector.
vulnerability, the heart to heart, the
Yeah,
That's yeah,
authenticity, like, yeah.
yeah,
that's where the radical honesty and vulnerability comes in. But there's
yeah,
got to be such an immense amount of emotional safety to do that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to say, like, in this sort of definition I just gave, it doesn't mean that all relationships work out, right? Like, sometimes we get into relationships that don't work out, right? Like
That
that.
are toxic,
Yeah. And that happens too. So it's not like non-monogamous or like, I'm going to collect all the relationships and like grow my family. Like, sometimes there's, toxic people that it's just not going to work out for you. So, and
Absolutely.
toxic, it doesn't, or maybe not even just toxic, just like, it's like, that was good. It just kind of like naturally faded off. That
Yeah.
happens too.
We're no longer in alignment with one another because we are wanting different things as part of our life.
Sure.
I think you said it recently,
Mm.
talking about seasonal, not just, and you didn't say seasonal, but you said something like, or did I hear it somewhere where somebody can be good for you in certain parts of your life, but then when
Yeah.
you become into other parts of your lives,
Mhm.
you're now different, and so you require different things now.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a saying, it's like people come into your life sometimes for a season,
A reason or a lifetime? Is it
a
season, reason,
season, a
lifetime?
reason, or a lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or a mix of all those, I guess. Oh, and I think your what you had shared was a good example of like again, like a good example of the norm or whatnot, of like what is secure, what is norm, or what is considered safe or whatnot, and so because emotional safety for one person can look like um let's talk like let's be radically honest with each other. Let's like really share our truth and and whatnot. And for some people that might not feel safe at all. That can feel like, whoa, that's too much. I don't want to hear all that, like I don't need to know your deepest, truest feelings and thoughts or whatnot. Like, let's and also let's slow it down. Let's, share at a different pace or whatnot. And so I think that was like a really good,
Yeah.
you have a really good example of like quote unquote, seeing for ourselves what the norm is or
Yeah.
whatever. Which reminds me of something that what was that? I was in a coaching session myself or something, or maybe I was having a Reiki session, and the Reiki facilitator, we were talking about attachment. I was talking about kind of the way that I was showing up in the new relationship or whatnot. And she brought up this perspective. I was like, whoa, I kind of like it. So I wanted to throw it here and see what you guys felt about it. But like with attachment styles, where I know even myself, I've gotten to this like, well, where am I? Which one am I? And it's confusing, and I get so confused. Like, is this anxious behavior or is this avoidant behavior? I can't tell because it feels like I think it's avoidant, but then it feels anxious, or it thinks it's anxious, but then it feels avoidant. Like, because for example, sometimes like I can get into this thing where it's like, well, I'm going to, it feels avoidant where it's like I'm going to like, I don't know, not reach out. I'm going to give this person their space or whatnot, and it's like I think it's this avoidant thing, but I'm feeling anxious about it. Like I'm not feeling good, And she mentioned, she was like, it's all anxious. Like even the avoidant, it's anxious. It just shows up in this other way, but it all really stems from what I think you said, Mo, is fear.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, these are just different ways in which our fear shows up. And so if it does ever feel confusing, you maybe throw all of that out and just check in with yourself about like,
What
am
are
I
you
feeling,
scared of?
yeah,
Or
what am I afraid of?
what is scary?
Exactly.
What is scary right now?
What's
Yeah,
scary right now? And what
jealousy
are the ways that
is
like
fear.
exactly.
Insecurity is fear. Like it all comes, anger is also fear.
Yeah.
Sadness
Yes.
And yeah.
is
And
Yeah.
a fear.
how, like, trying to see for ourselves, like, when we're in this fear state, how does that impact my ability to relate? How does that impact my relationships? Because
Yeah.
I guess scientifically speaking, if we're in that fear state, it's difficult to feel safe enough and relaxed enough
Yeah.
to do these
Maybe
relate to
we need to
relate,
start, maybe we need to start a movement called radical fear, because I think acknowledging fear has been so impactful in my relationships.
Mhm.
I
Right.
like that.
Just radical fear, because that's what it all fucking boils down to. And when we can talk about it, like we've got this list of how to heal and grow within non-monogamy: self-awareness, co-regulation,
Mm.
building a secure base, inner child work, attachment informed agreements, like all of these things. But literally we can, like you said, Melissa, throw it all out and
Get
just
to the root, get to the
get to the
of it.
root. Like let's yeah, we should just call this, radical,
Yeah.
fear.
And you get to decide, again, just like we talk about now, you get to decide how you face your fear. You don't have to be like, I know sometimes I can either, I know I said I was kind of the avoidant, but I also sometimes can go to the other extreme. I'm like, let me just face it, let's go, and I put myself in these situations in these positions. So like, fuck it, let me just face my fear, and
Yeah,
sometimes that can be a little dysregulating to me too. But
totally.
you get to like really choose your pace and your path and like these creative ways in which find and connect with your fears. But I think it's helpful information. So helpful.
Yeah. And it's so crazy we've been having this conversation. And I'm not going to bring it into this call today, but it's just because I was just having a conversation with Nisha, and these things that come up today literally come up around fear. And it's just so crazy. Yeah.
We're all scared. I mean, like at the end of the day, I think we're just so scared because, as the human condition is, we have no idea what happens to us after we leave this mortal coil. So, like, I think we are all living in this like different theories, different, like we're just always theorizing, but the like common thread is fear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we take I don't know where I got this from. Was it you? I feel like it was you, Kelly. No. Do you use like an elevator metaphor? No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Escalator. Mo does too, the escalator.
Oh, no, no, no. This is like, okay, it was talking about like taking the elevator. You could take the escalator, the down escalator too, but like taking the elevator down to the vulnerable feelings, right? Of like, no, it wasn't you. Okay.
That's not me, but I like it.
Yeah, it's
There's
like
that iceberg theory too. It's like
right,
Yeah.
right.
stuff that are covert and the stuff that are overt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we're often at a default, functioning like at the surface or whatnot. And that's what I love about EFT work too, emotion focused therapy. It's like slows things down and really helps to kind of get to the fear, to the vulnerable parts of us, which all of these, we have all these very creative ways, very, very creative ways of not getting to those like very vulnerable parts,
Yeah.
of ourselves, or to sharing those vulnerable parts
It
of
like
us.
goes right back to those coping skills you developed as a child, as a kid, right? And we've only gotten like we've perfected them by this point in our lives.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when we are faced with growth around, especially in non-monogamy, like we're like looking down the barrel of like, 40 years of conditioning, 50, in my case, 50 years, but yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I very deliberately talk about that with some of my clients because, a lot of times people identify, and I think y'all all know this. I really hate the idea of a maladaptive behavior. I'm like, no, if we really get to the base of it, it was a super creative way for you to navigate the world. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater or whatever that is. Like there are parts of it that you've probably developed really great things in yourself, but what parts are still hanging around that aren't really good for you? And I think that's where you're saying, Melissa, they're really creative ways that we kind of rationalize why we are how we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And again, right, it served us at one point, for whatever reason it did, but it's just now it doesn't serve us in today where we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if we're doing it like especially if it's just on autopilot and we're not very aware of it. I think that's a huge part too.
Yeah.
And
Just
it's
the awareness alone could
preventing
be
us from connecting with
Yeah.
each other. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
I love
think
it.
we can wrap it up.
It was
Yeah.
really beautiful. Well said, guys. I
chat,
love it so
everybody.
much.
Great way to come back.
Yep. Season 2, we're back.
Yes.
All right. So let's thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yes.
All right. Till next time.
Thank you for listening. Shades of Pleasure podcast is currently unsponsored and is brought to you by Los Angeles Sex Therapy and Last Collective in partnership with Shades Therapy and Shades of Non-Monogamy. To support our endeavor so we can continue to bring this pleasurable content, please visit our Substack at shadesofpleasure.substack.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.